My YouTube channel. I will discuss on the topic on general characteristics and outline classification of the Phylum-Chordata. So first, what are the chordates? Phylum-Chordata is coming from the Greek word chorda means chord, and that belongs to Deuterostomia branch of the animal kingdom. And two possible lines of the descent that have been proposed. The first one is the earlier speculations that focused on the arthropod, annelids and molluscan groups, that is a Protostomia branch of the invertebrates, and that have fallen from favor. And another line that is now believed that the only members of the echinoderms, hemichordates assemblage, that is Deuterostomia branch, and that deserve serious consideration as the chordata sister group. Now the chordates are the largest phylum of the deuterostomes. Chordates share with other deuterostome characteristics radial cleavage. What are the cleavage? Cleavage that may be radial or the spiral, that depending on the orientation of the mitotic spindle that relative to the egg axis. And the radial cleavage, where the spindles of the given cell are oriented either parallel or perpendicular to the animal vegetal axis. And there is another interesting feature. Anus derived from the first embryonic opening, that is a blastopore, and mouth derived from an opening of secondary origin, and the formation of the coelom. What is coelom? Coelom is a fluid-filled internal body cavity that lying between the gut and outer body wall musculature and lined with tissue that derived from embryonic mesoderm. And the animals that possessing such body cavity that are known as coelomate or eucoelomate, you mean true. Now the chordates that occupy a greater variety of the habitats and so more complicated mechanism of the cell maintenance, and in comparison to other groups, they are providing almost unlimited scope for the specialization in life habitat, form and the function. And this is a figure. Here we see the formation of the coelom. The first one, the coelom formation, that is in case of the schizocele, you see here there's a coelom formation occurs by the splitting of the mesoderm. So that is actual split here. Now here you see the coelom formation occurs. Now another figure, that is a coelom formations occurs by the enterocele, in which the archenteron evaginates into the embryonic blastocele. So in case of the protostomes, basically the among the protostomes the found that's a found in the mouth, that's a form from the blastopore. Hence the term protostomes meaning the first mouth. And when a mouth forms from the first opening, that appears during the embryonic development, that is in case of the protostomes, whereas in case of the deuterostomes, that is the chordates, the mouth never develops from the blastopore. The blastopore may rise to the anus, hence the term deuterostome mean second mouth. So what are the characteristic feature of the Phylum-Chordata? The chordates show the bilateral symmetry, segmented body, 3 germ layers that are well developed coelom. What are the germ layers? What are the definitions of the germ layers? Germ layers may be defined as a group of cells that behaving as a unit during the early stages of embryonic development, and that giving rise to distinctly different tissues or organs or system in the adult. And you know, in case of the diploblastic animals, presence of the ectoderm and the endoderm, whereas in case of the diploblastic animal, the mesoderm incorporates. Now the notochords. Notochords is a skeletal rod that present at some stage in the life cycle. And presence of single, dorsal, tubular nerve cords, that is the anterior end of the cord that is usually enlarged to form the brain. And then pharyngeal pouches that present at some stage in the life cycle in aquatic chordates, and that develops into pharyngeal slits. And then endostyle, that is in the floor of the pharynx or a thyroid gland that derived from the endostyle. post-anal tail that usually projecting beyond the anus at some stages but may or may not persist. And the digestive system is a complete and also complicated. And segmentation, if segmentation present, that restricted to outer body wall, head and the tail and not extending into the coelom. That are the characteristic features found in the Phylum-Chordata. Now, what are the hallmark features? You know, whenever you purchase a ornamental products that's made by the gold, you see the carat. So that is a hallmark. In case of the chordates, some hallmark features are present. So what are the features? Notochord, nerve cord, pharyngeal slits, endostyles, and also post-anal tail. So these distinguishing characteristic features that define the chordates. So that's features fundamentally present in the chordata, and that's characters do not express simultaneously in the adult forms but must express at least in embryonic or larval forms. The first one, notochord. The notochord is flexible. The notochord, that is a flexible rod-like structure extending the length of the body, and it is the first part of the endoskeleton to appear in the embryo. The notochord is an axis for muscle attachment, and because it can bend without shortening, it permits undulatory movements of the body, and in most protochordates and in jawless vertebrates, the notochord persists throughout the lives. In all vertebrates except hackfishes, a series of cartilaginous or bone vertebrae are formed from mesenchyme cells that derive from blocks or mesodermal cells lateral to the notochord. In most vertebrates, the notochord is displaced by vertebrae, although remains of notochord may persist between or within the vertebrae. So that are the features of the notochord. Then nerve cord. You know, in case of the invertebrate phylum, the nerve cord, that is a ventral to the alimentary canal, whereas in case of the chordate features, presence of dorsal hollow tubular nerve cord, and that is dorsal to the alimentary canal. Now the anterior end becomes enlarged, and that forms the brain in vertebrates. The hollow cord that protruded in the embryo in folding of the ectodermal cells on the dorsal side of the body above the notochord. Among vertebrates, the nerve cord passes through the protective neural arches of the vertebrae, and the brain is surrounded by bony or cartilaginous cranium. Now the gill slits. The gill slits are the opening that lead from the pharyngeal cavity to the outside, and they are formed by inpocketing of the outside ectoderm and evagination or outpocketing of the endodermal lining of the pharyngeal pouches. In aquatic chordates, the pockets break through the pharyngeal cavity where they meet to form the pharyngeal slits, whereas in case of amniotes, some pockets may not break throughout the pharyngeal cavity and only grooves are formed instead of slits. Whereas in case of the tetrapod vertebrates, the pharyngeal pouches give rise to several different structures, that including the eustachian tube, middle-ear cavity, tonsils, and the parathyroid glands, and the perforated pharynx that evolved as a filter feeding apparatus, and that is used as such in case of the protochordates. So this adaptation that led to the evolution of the internal gills, completing conversion of the pharynx from a filter feeding apparatus in protochordates to a respiratory organ in aquatic vertebrates. Now, endostyle. Until recently, the endostyle was not recognized as a chordate characteristic feature. However, its derivative, the thyroid gland, that is found in all chordates. But in no other animals, the endostyle in the pharyngeal floor secrete mucus that traps small food particles brought into the pharyngeal cavity. endostyle is found in the protochordates and lamprey larvae. Some cells in the endostyle that secrete iodinated proteins, and these cells are homologous with the iodinated hormone secreting thyroid gland of adult lampreys and remainder of the vertebrates. Now the last one, tail, that is present behind the posterior opening of the digestive tract. Again in all embryos, even in those groups in which it is lost in adult. The post-anal tail, together with somatic musculature and the stiffening notochord, that provides the motility that larval tunicates and amphioxus need for their pre-swimming existence. As a structure added to the body behind the end of the digestive tract, it clearly has evolved specifically for propulsion in water, and its efficiency is later increased in fishes with the addition of fins. Now the tail is evidently human as a vestige. That is that's a coccyx, that is a series of the small vertebrae at the end of the spinal column. But most of the mammals that have a agable tail, as in adult forms. Now this is a phylogenetic tree. That phylogenetic tree, that's a show in case of the Precambrian period hypothetical deuterostome ancestor, and from where that's a primitive sessile feeder, and from there free swimming chordate ancestor, and that are the several branches: Urochordata, Cephalochordata, hagfish, lamprey, cartilaginous fish, etc., etc. Then early tetrapods, and this is a primitive tetrapods, and that's a reptiles, birds, and mammals. And this is a cladogram, and you see here that is a Urochordata, and the Urochordata that bears the notochord and the nerve cord in the pre-swimming larval stage, and from that another features, that features is the axial skeleton retained and throughout the lives, and that differs the Urochordates from the rest of the chordates. And then there is another derived characters, that's a characters naked skin with slime glands, and that separates the mixin from the lineage. Similarly, so many features, that's is jaw, sometimes such a pier limb, sometimes extreme running membrane, etc., etc., that can separates the chordates into protochordates and the chordates, and then acraniata and the craniata. And this is a traditional divisions of the phylum Chordata. And here you see that the Urochordata, Cephalochordata, Cyclostomata, Condycthys, Osteichthyes, Amphibia, Reptile, Abyss, and Mammalia. That are the Chordata. Now the Chordata is divided into two groups. One is a Vertebrata and another is a Protochordata. So what are the Vertebrata? As the name Vertebrata coming from the vertebrates. That's a derive their name from vertebrae. The vertebrae actually the series of the bones that make up the vertebral column or the backbone. Now this is the acraniata also. So that's a Urochordates and Cephalochordates, that is the protochordates, and acraniata also. Whereas the craniata, that is a vertebrata. Why they are known as a craniata? Because they have a cranium, that is a bony or the cartilaginous brain case. That is a craniata. Now the craniata is again divided into two categories: agnatha, that's a mixin, and the petromyzon, that is a under the category of the agnatha, and rest of the part, that is a gnathostomata. Agnatha I mean lacking, without jaw, whereas the gnathostomata mean with jaw. So now the gnathostomata is again divided into two parts: species and the tetrapods. Basically, if you see the pieces, then you see here different types of the fins presence: dorsal fin, alar fin, pectoral fin, pelvic fin, etc., etc. So fins and that's the lateral line scales, and so many other characteristic features are present in case of the series species. Whereas in case of the tetrapoda, it's coming from the Greek word tetra mean 4 and poda mean feet, that have limbs, and that's supported with digits in place of the pectoral and pelvic fins that are found in series species. And limbs supports tetrapods weights on land, while feet with digits that efficiently transmit muscle generated forces to the ground when they walk. So that are the features. And another two category, anamniota and amniota. The amniota actually this is a member of the tetrapods that's named for a key characteristics of the amniotic egg, and that contains specialized membranes that including the fluid filled amnion, and that protect the embryo. So amniotic membrane presence, so that's a group is the amniota, when the amniotic membrane not found, that is the anamniota, anamniota in mixin, petromyzin, condyctis, osteichthyes and amphibia, and reptiles, abyss and mammalia. That's are the amniota groups. Now, basically the subphylum Hemichordata, Cephalochordata, and Urochordata that include a relatively simple animals that do not have the brain and brain box. Hence, they are collectively called the acraniates. Now, the member includes in this category, they have similarities to the possible ancestor of the vertebrates. Hence, they are called the protochordates. Now, the subphylum Craniata or vertebrata that includes advanced animals that possesses cranium or the brain box. Now the positions of the Hemichordata in animal kingdom remains controversial. Initially it was thought to be an Annelida, but later it was included in the phylum Chordata. Still later workers gave an independent phylum status of the Hemichordata. Now you know this acorn worms of the phylum Hemichordata possesses pharyngeal gill slits and a poorly developed and in some case hollow dorsal nerve cord and considered near the chordates in phylogeny. However, they lack a notochord and in other ways are different from the chordates characteristic features. So, this is a classification scheme of the phylum Chordata as per Young 1981. They divided the phylum Chordata into 4 subphylum. As per Young, the Hemichordata under the category of phylum Chordata. And other subphylums are Cephalochordata, Urochordata and Vertebrata. Now, Urochordata is divided into 3 classes. What are the classes? Acidaceae, Thaliacea and Larvaceae. Whereas the Vertebrata, that is the Craniata, that's divided into 2 superclasses. One is a Agnatha and another is a Gnathostomata. The Agnatha is also contains Pteraspidomorphi and Cephalospidomorphi, whereas the Gnathostomata that contain Placodermi, Condyctis, Osteichthyes, Amphibia, Reptilia, Abyss and Mammalia. And these are the reference books. Maximum portion of my lectures collected from the famous book Integrated Principle of the Zoology, Hickman et al. And others reference books are also mainly classification scheme based on the Young, the life of vertebrates, and other books are comparative anatomy of the vertebrates, Saxena and Saxena, a textbooks of zoology, Parkana and Haswell's, biology of animals, Ganguly, Odhikari, Shina and Goswami, and Chordata 1, Arora also. Thank you everybody.